Hello and welcome to Economics Marathon lecture. The chapter which we are going to do today is demand analysis. This is the most important chapter from 12th board point of view and have highest weightage of marks. What we are going to complete in this chapter is demand, its assumption, the law of demand, the schedule of demand and exceptions. So let's start with the demand. Demand is desire plus willingness plus ability for a particular commodity. If you have desire to buy certain commodity, if you have monetary ability to purchase that commodity, plus you want to buy that commodity, if these three things combine together, then we call it as effective demand in economics. Now, you can see the demand schedule where you can see that as we increase the price, the quantity demanded shrinks, or as we decrease the price, quantity demanded rises. So, Professor Benham defined demand as the demand for anything at a given price is the amount of it which will be bought per unit of time at that price. So, it means that demand is always in relation to time and price. Now, why this demand curve which you saw right now, which is going downwards, that is sloping downwards? So, there are various reasons that why demand curve slopes downwards. The first one is the application of law of DMU, which we already discussed while studying chapter 2, that is utility analysis. So, DMU is what? Like diminishing marginal utility. With every additional utility which I am consuming, the overall satisfaction which I am getting goes on diminishing. So, I am not going to buy additional commodity if I am not getting any kind of satisfaction. So, if any producer want me to buy certain commodity, then he has to reduce its price, and that is why you can see the prices are going down and quantity demanded is rising, and that is the reason why demand curve is sloping downward. The second is income effect. Income effect is nothing but the decrease in price of a commodity. For example, let us say Lay's chips, the price is 30 rupees per pack. But if it drops down to 10 rupees per pack, it increases your purchasing power and now you will buy 3 packs of Lay's. So, that is income effect. The third one is substitution effect, because of which demand curve slopes downward. Substitution effect is nothing, again we are comparing two commodities, say Lay's and Budhani chips. So, if Budhani chips are cheaper than Lay's chips, then people who are buying Lay's chips will shift to Budhani chips and the quantity demanded of Budhani chips is going to increase. The fourth reason is multiple use of the commodity. Example, milk. Milk is used for several things. So, if the prices of milk goes down, then normal household will demand more quantity of milk to make several products. And fifth and the last one is new consumer. As the population of a country is rising, new consumers are coming in the market and they are asking for more goods and services. And because of all 5 reasons, the demand curve slopes downward. Now, we are moving towards the law of demand. Now, let us look at the types of demand. So, as I say, economics is the subject of examples only. So, here I am going to give you quick examples of different types of demand. There are 5 types of demand in your syllabus. The first one is direct demand. Suppose a person is very hungry and he needs chips to eat. So, the demand for chips is a direct demand. Second is indirect demand. Indirect demand generally asked by the producer. The Lay's company who is making the chips now need machine to satisfy your hunger. So, the demand for machine is indirect demand. The third demand is joint demand, when two things combine together. For example, bread, butter, pen and refill. So, they are demanded together. So, that is a joint demand. The fourth one is composite demand. Composite demand is a demand for a particular commodity which can be put to use for several things. For example, milk, for example, electricity is examples of composite demand. The fifth one, competitive demand. Competitive demand is basically when we are choosing between the two commodities, which commodity you want. For example, Coke and Pepsi. While eating, when you decide whether you want to eat roti or chawal. So, that is the example of competitive demand. Now, what we are discussing here is the determinants of demand, generally asked for 8 marks question and very important. So, there are different determinants. Let us do that quickly. The first determinant of effective demand is price of the commodity. Very simple rule. As the price rises, quantity demanded decreases. As the price goes down, quantity demanded increases. The second determinant is income of a consumer. If your income is more, you will demand more of a quantity. If your income is less, you will demand less of a quantity. The third determinant is price of the substitute. Being a rational consumer, we always choose between the products. So, we always look at the price of the different substitutes available in the market, and accordingly, we go for a product which gives us maximum satisfaction as well as it is cheaper. So, accordingly, law of quantity of demanded changes. The fourth determinant is price of the complementary goods. Complementary goods are the goods which are consumed together. For example, with the rise in price of petrol, the quantity demanded for petrol driven car is going to decrease. People will switch to electric car or diesel car. So, the rise in price of one commodity is going to affect the quantity demanded of another commodity. The fourth one is the nature of the commodity. If the commodity is of very essential in nature, then people are going to consume it irrespective of the prices. For example, COVID vaccines. The sixth one is the size of the population. Higher the size of a population of a country, higher will be the quantity demanded. If we compare India with Germany, you will see that the quantity demanded in India is much higher than the quantity demanded in Germany. The seventh one is expectation about the future prices. If consumer thinks that future prices are going to rise, then he will buy the commodity today itself. Although the prices of the commodity today may be higher, but he is going to buy that because he is expecting that the future price is going to rise. Best example will be gold. The eighth determinant is advertisement effect. Advertisement effect basically talks about when we see certain advertisement on television or radio or newspaper, we read it, we buy the commodity irrespective of thinking whether the commodity has usefulness for us or not. So that is advertisement effect. The ninth one is taste, preference and habit of a consumer. If consumer is addicted to certain taste, have certain preference for certain commodities and maybe have a habit of consuming certain commodity, at that time consumer will not look at the prices and he will raise the quantity demanded. The 10th determinant is level of taxation. Lower the level of taxation on a particular commodity, its selling price is going to go down and consumer will increase the quantity demanded and vice versa. The 11th determinant is other factors which include climatic change in a country, overall international economic change, the policies of government which will affect the quantity demanded. So, all these 11 factors basically talks about the determinants of demand. Now, next we are talking about will be law of demand. Law of demand. Law of demand given by Alfred Marshall. Marshall said, other things being equal, higher the price of the commodity, smaller will be the quantity demanded, and smaller the price of the commodity, higher will be the quantity demanded. Basically, it is in relation to the price. Higher the price of any commodity, people will not buy that commodity, and if we lower the price of a particular commodity, people will buy more of it. There are certain assumptions to this law. The first assumption is constant income. Marshall assumed that there is no change in the income level. Marshall assumed that there is no change in the size of population. There is no change in the substitute prices. There is no change in the price of complements, as well as there is no change in future expectation about the prices. Also, the taste preference habit of a consumer is not changing, and there is no change in taxation or the government policies as well. Now, you can see the demand schedule which clearly states Alfred Marshall's law that with the reduction in the price of the commodity, quantity demanded is increasing. The next point is exceptions to law of demand. So, there are 6 exceptions to law of demand. The first one is Giffen goods. This concept was propounded by Sir Robert Giffen. Robert Giffen said that there are certain inferior goods which if we reduce the price of certain goods, then also the quantity demanded is not going to increase, which is against the law of demand, because law of demand says that lower the price, higher the quantity demanded. But yes, there are certain goods, if you reduce their price, still people do not prefer to buy that commodity. So these are the example of inferior goods. The second one is prestigious goods. Prestigious goods are the goods which are of very high value. So people buy that commodity to show their social status. For example, expensive wine, expensive car, perfumes are the example of prestigious goods. The third one is price illusion. We normally think that higher the price of the commodity, better will be the quality, and because of that we buy the particular commodity at higher price. The fourth one is ignorance of the consumer. If consumer do not know about the actual price of a commodity in the market, at that time consumer may buy that particular commodity at a very high price. The fifth one is habituated good. If a consumer is habituated of drinking alcohol or smoking a cigarette, at that time he will not look at the price of a particular commodity, he will just consume it. The sixth one is speculation. Again, if consumer thinks that the future price of a particular commodity is going to rise, then he will buy that commodity at the current price. So that is speculation. The next is the variation and changes in demand curve. Okay. Variation includes two parts, expansion and contraction. Expansion and contraction happens only and only because of price. As the price goes down, quantity demanded expand. So we are moving along the same demand curve. As the price goes up, quantity demanded contract. So that is on the same demand curve you can see expansion as well as contraction. The second is changes in demand curve, that is increase and decrease in demand curve. This happens because of any other factor which we discuss except price. For example, if income of a consumer is increasing, then the demand curve will shift towards right, that is called as increase in demand. But if income of a household is decreasing, then the demand curve will shift towards left, that is called as decrease in demand. The next chapter which we are taking is elasticity of demand. Elasticity is nothing but the responsiveness of a consumer towards the price. Being a rational consumer, we do not like the price change. Higher the price, we do not want that commodity. Lower the price, yes, we want that commodity. So this responsiveness of a people towards price is called as elasticity. Now as per 12th board syllabus, there are three types of elasticity which is given. The first one is price elasticity, the second one is cross elasticity, and the third one is income elasticity. So let's start with income elasticity. Income elasticity is nothing but the responsiveness of a person towards the change in income. It is shown by the formula percentage change in quantity demanded upon percentage change in income of a household. The second type is called as cross elasticity. It is the responsiveness of a change in the consumer's behavior to a particular quantity demanded in respect to the price of another commodity, that is substitute. It is shown by mathematical formula, that is percentage change in quantity demanded of X upon percentage change in price of commodity Y. So with the change in the price of your substitute, how you are going to react to the original quantity demanded of a particular commodity is cross elasticity. And the third one, which is the most important one and frequently asked in board examination, is price elasticity. Price elasticity is further split into 5 parts: perfectly inelastic demand, relatively inelastic demand, unitary elastic demand, relatively elastic demand, and perfectly elastic demand. Let's start with the first one, that is perfectly inelastic demand. Inelastic basically means that consumer is not responding towards the price change. So if you increase the price of a commodity, still consumer demand that much of quantity. If you decrease the price of the commodity, still consumer want that much of quantity. Example, salt. So if in a household the salt requirement is 5 kg, so whether the price is 35 rupees per kg or the price is 135 rupees kg, consumer is going to ask for 5 kg of salt. And that's why in examination that is important to remember the graph, and remember the words start with perfectly inelastic. So graph actually take the shape of I. The second one is relatively inelastic. Relatively inelastic basically says with a huge change in price, there is small change in quantity demanded. The third one is unitary elastic. Unitary elastic basically means with the equal change or the proportionate change in price, quantity demanded also changing in the same proportion. The fourth one is relatively elastic. Relatively elastic basically means with a small change in price, the quantity demanded is changing like anything. You can take all the normal commodities under this, which we do for a bulk, which we buy for a bulk shopping. So you are going on a street and you are going to buy some certain commodities. If the producer reduces the price, at that time you buy more of it. Example, sales. And the last one is perfectly elastic demand, which basically means with no change in price, the quantity demanded changes like anything. This is a myth. Actually, consumer do not behave in that way. But to remember this graph in examination, remember the shape of E, and perfectly elastic demand actually take the shape of E. So this is the price elasticity of demand. The next we are going to discuss is determinants of elasticity. Now let's discuss some factors which actually influence elasticity. So there are various factors given in the textbook, but we'll look at some important factors. The first one is nature of the commodity. If the commodity is of extremely essential or necessary in nature, its elasticity is relatively inelastic. It means at that time people will not look at the price of the commodity but will buy it. But if the nature is luxurious commodity or normal commodity, its elasticity is relatively elastic. The second point is number of use. If a commodity can be put to several use, it has relatively elastic demand. But if commodity have a single use, then it have relatively inelastic demand. Then availability of substitute. If the close substitutes are available for a particular commodity, it has more elasticity. But if close substitutes are not available, it will have a relatively inelastic demand. The next one, habit of a consumer. If a consumer is habituated to a particular commodity, then it will have relatively inelastic demand, while if it is non-habituated goods, then the elasticity will be relatively elastic. The next one is durability. If the commodity is durable in nature, relatively elastic. If commodity is non-durable in nature, relatively inelastic. So these factors basically influence elasticity of demand.